FalloutEquestria Heroes, Chapter 31, Eye of the Storm, written by no one. When she awoke, the world was on fire. I gasped at the sharp pain of a needle going through my neck.
Stop moving!
Serenity carefully used her magic to clean and soothe a gaping wound in my neck. It didn't hurt too bad, but that was mostly a combination of my earlier Mad-X and blood loss. Apparently I'd lost a lot of blood.
It's a bad wound, you know. Wouldn't want to make it worse. You're really lucky you only nicked a major vein what goes to your head. Lucky.
I groaned as Serenity finished stitching up the wound, tying the wire in a little knot.
Didn't even know you had a kit like this. Of course I do. Had it for a while. Can't always rely on some healing potions.
She wiped sweat off her forehead with a hoof.
So it's gonna scar without a healing potion? Oh no!
I deadpanned, rolling into a sitting position.
Whatever will I do?
I scratched idly at the scars that marked over half of my face as I looked around. The fire that had marked the ground had died out, but the building behind was still burning loudly, and I imagined it would until there was nothing left but ash.
Are you going to talk to him?
Flair asked, plopping beside me with a heavy thud. He still had most of his armor on, but his helmet off, revealing his soot-stained, sweat-streaked face.
I would, but we got along poorly.
Who?
I asked, looking over at Flair, feeling a pang of guilt for forcing Flair through that ordeal.
Oh, you mean...
My eyes wandered across the complex to the tiny figure rocking back and forth over the body of Dragonslayer. Why anyone would weep for such a... monster, I couldn't imagine.
Someone needs to talk to him. Can't leave him here, right? I mean, sure, he did try to kill us all a little, but he's just a baby dragon. Dragonslayer probably stole him as a child or something.
Flair was certainly an odd stallion, showing sympathy over someone who tried to kill him. Maybe I could learn a thing or two from him.
We will speak with him,
Platinum Haze said, her voice soft and slightly wavering. Looking up at her, I realized she looked completely exhausted. Her body slumped and her head hung low. The tip of her horn sparked slightly, and I wondered if maybe she had overexerted herself, but that seemed hard to believe.
I'll go too,
I said, standing slowly, my legs shaky. So shaky I nearly collapsed until Haze wrapped a wing around me to stabilize me. Without the adrenaline pumping through me, everything hurt so much.
I, would too.
Serenity looked at the ground.
I don't think he probably...
There was a look of guilt on her face.
It's not your fault.
I reached out to mess up her mane.
But don't worry about it. We'll talk to him.
Serenity nodded but did not look comforted.
Okay, Mama. Don't walk too fast or anything. You're really hurt. You'll need lots of rest. After we get back to the boat, I'll sleep for a week.
That actually seemed like a really good idea, and it seemed to placate Serenity somewhat. As I hobbled beside Haze, Serenity had wanted to fix my leg first, but Haze insisted on my neck, which was probably a good idea, but it meant the leg was still not working. I wondered if this was a good idea. We had apparently just killed this dragon's dad, and if I knew anything, it's that most people love their parents, even if they weren't the best to others. I looked up at Platinum Haze and wondered if she could sympathize.
Excuse us,
Haze said as we approached the dragon. A sense of dread was rising in my gut, as a memory of this dragon repeatedly trying to eat me flashed through my mind. The prevailing smell of smoke didn't help.
We are sorry to disturb you, and we are sorry for your loss. We wish to know if there's anything we can do to assist you in this time of need. Go away,
the dragon huffed between sobs.
Just go away. I hate you. I hate all of you. We understand your pain.
She lowered her head.
We once lost our dear mother, and it is not fair.
We cannot dictate how you should feel, but if you require anything, we will help you for as long as we stay here."
"Why?"
he hissed between his teeth, still hunched over Dragonslayer's corpse.
"Why did you fight him? Us! He was making the world a better place!"
Reasons are complicated, and the world is not a place of simple black and whites. We did not participate in any fighting. We simply protected those who we love," Hayes said solemnly.
"Not you!"
He turned all of a sudden, pointing a claw at me. It was hard to remember that this small purple and green dragon, with his large yellow eyes and tiny wings, was the same dragon I was fighting not long before. Even with all the rage he could muster in his tiny face, he was anything but threatening.
I
felt like I'd been hit.
He manipulated me a while back to start a war, and he used the laughing stallion to attack Thiese. He killed Pinprick, a friend of mine with a small daughter. He killed the Batmare. By setting off a mega spell, he kidnapped my daughter.
My voice slowly rose as I spoke until I realized I was yelling. I shut my mouth and looked away, ashamed at raising my voice at such a small creature. I grit my teeth and took a deep breath as the small dragon quivered in front of me.
He would have done the same to me. He tried to do the same. You did too. I know you loved him, but to me, he was a monster. You should have listened,"
said the dragon. No, Avarice. That's what Dragonslayer called him.
"He tried to show you. No, you wouldn't listen,"
he huffed, rubbing his eyes.
"I don't want your charity."
He spat on the ground at our hoofs.
"Leave. Go. Let me bury my papa in peace. Then let me leave. Far away, so far away I'll never see your likes again."
I bit my lip lightly and gave a nod.
"Okay. For what it's worse, I'm sorry. Not that he died, but that he died and meant so much to you. Just go away."
The dragon begged once more. So we did. Before we could leave, Serenity had to fix my foreleg and just for good measure stitch up the stab wounds on my back. Those had been mostly absorbed by my armor, so they weren't that pressing, but she insisted. Unfortunately, as we were doing that, Flair just had to go poke around at the disabled Ponytron and turn it back on. At least he was somewhat bearable when he was complimenting us on our victory over the dragon, but that didn't mean he wasn't frustrating on principle. Eventually, though, we made it out of that damnable canyon. As we took our last steps outside the gate, I turned and looked at the words written on the plaque leading into the base. Fort Spitfire. May those who died to defend peace never be forgotten. I laughed, just a little. It would have hurt too much to laugh more. There was something profoundly funny about that plaque. I didn't know what, but it was worth laughing about at least. "So that was fun," Flair said, looking back towards the canyon, carrying his helmet under his wing. "A filly rescued, a madman killed, a dragon defeated. This is the type of story that needs to be written down lest ponies forget. But there's so much missing context." There was a sly smile on his face. "But it all worked out. Nobody died and Hayek didn't even lose a limb."
"Came close,"
I said, grunting through the pain throbbing through my body. Who knew getting repeatedly knocked around by a dragon took a toll on you?
"At least we survived."
"For now." Flair looked back at me. "Listen, Hired, I know you want to take a swig at the Watchers because if Dragonslayer is telling the truth, well, what they did to you, what they're planning to do, I'm not going to try and stop you or anything stupid like that, but be careful. They made you like you are, and they can unmake you." The pain in my gut burned away to dread and fear, just thinking about what they did, what it meant. It made me feel queasy.
"I know."
I stared intently at the ground, trying not to betray my emotions.
"You sound like you won't be there with me."
"I won't." He flapped his wings gently to lift himself into the air. My home was attacked, my family betrayed, well, betrayed by themselves. The remnants need me. I like you hired, but they're my family and I told you I'd need to go to them after we rescued Serenity. It's time.
I'm sure there will be plenty of time to take out the Watchers together.
I walked closer to him.
Until then,
I placed a friendly hoof on his shoulder.
Stay safe.
Oh, you know me. He placed his helmet on his head, then flapped a few times until he was flying upside down.
I'm too awesome to get hurt. Toodles hired.
He turned his head towards Serenity.
Take good care of your mama. Remember to put her to bed early and no water before, even if she whines. She's such a whiner.
Serenity gave Flair a stiff salute.
Aye, aye, Captain.
He blew a kiss to Platinum Haze too for good measure.
And I'm out.
With a few sturdy flaps of his wings, Flair was speeding off towards the horizon so fast I thought for a second I almost saw a blue and green trail in the air behind him.
Nice job. Show me the Pegasus.
Walkirk chirped, eliciting a glare from me and everyone else.
What? I just mean the remnants are a dangerous group. A shame he's associated with them.
You said you run dice.
I said sternly to Walkirk.
I do.
Name me one group that's not dangerous.
He stared silently at me for a good minute before he started to roll away. Good. Maybe if he kept quiet the long, excruciatingly painful walk back to the boat wouldn't be so bad. To his credit, he was mostly silent, which was nice. I liked the peace and quiet. It gave me time to count my broken ribs and groan in pain as I hobbled along. One of these days I was going to do something cool without getting completely fucked up in the process. Really? I suppose I was lucky though. Most anyone else would have been dead several times over in the canyon alone. Maybe Celestia really was looking out for me. Or she thought my pain was funny. When we finally reached the river and boat, it was such a relief I could have fainted. By then, I had long since lost the ability to walk on my own power alone and had to lean against Platinum Haze for support. Still, just seeing the boat, and with it the idea that I would be able to sleep, it was refreshing. It was such a pretty sight. Though partially that might have been something to do with the fact the sun was setting too, bathing the ship and water in orange light. "You're alive!" I heard someone gasp. Looking up, I saw red skies running towards me. "By Luna's beard, I was watching for you and I swear I saw a dragon!"
Yeah,
I grinned.
just a small one. No big deal.
"What? He shook his head in disbelief. "So long as you're alright, we can take you back up the river if you like. Serenity's alright, right?" Just then Serenity decided to show herself from behind me.
Hi, I'm alright. It was super crazy, but it wasn't so bad because I'm brave. Oh!
She jumped a little in excitement.
Wanna see Scooterborg? She's changed a lot since I first got her from you guys.
"Sure, my wife would be interested as well." He started to turn back towards the ship. "But first, I get the feeling your mom had a long day. Let's get her to bed." Yay! I really needed to sleep. For a few years. I also needed a bath because I was covered in blood. But that could wait.
Thanks.
I muttered to red skies.
Come on, Mama. I'll tuck you in.
Serenity said, running ahead of me. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. To be honest, as soon as I made it onto the boat and collapsed into my bed, I was out like a light. Ashes. The world was nothing but ashes. As far as I could see, the world had burned to the ground, but the fires had long since given out. Just blackness and charred rubble. Looking to the sky, I saw it was glowing a sickly green. My stomach churned as I watched the lights in the sky dance and burn. This was wrong. So wrong. But I couldn't put a hoof on how. I walked forwards through a century of dust and decay, my hoofs breaking through burnt buildings and blackened bones alike. I should have been sickened at trampling through pony remains, but they were so old and frail it was hard to imagine they had ever been anything other than bones. They were a part of the land I created, nothing more or less, So I walked through them, kicking up soot. What had happened here? Was there a city here once? Did ponies live, breathe, laugh, love, where now there was nothing but remains? It was curious and sickening, so I kept walking. I don't know how, but I knew I was heading towards the center. Just the center of what, I didn't know. Eventually I found it, bathed in green light. Unlike the rest of the world, the small space at the center was pristine. White walls, medical devices, and a stretcher with a figure beneath a white sheet. I stepped into the white center, tracking dirt and dust and bones. My hoof reached for the center, for the pony on the stretcher, but I stopped. I knew what lay underneath. I knew. Revealing it would do nothing. I already knew the answer. What good is finding out the truth if the truth was horrible? But I couldn't help myself. My hoof moved beyond my control and revealed myself under the sheet. I opened my eyes and screamed. I struggled against the bonds that lashed me to the stretcher, against the world that held me down. When did I get so weak, so powerless? I fought with all my might, but my strength barely budged the world. Above me stood a Pegasus, wrapped in darkness. I couldn't see his face, his colors or his cutie mark. All I could see was a glowing green syringe he had in his hoof. His face contorted in a smile too wide for his head as he pressed the syringe into my leg. Fire filled my veins, and I cried out. No amount of screaming could stop the flames though as they spread through my body, engulfing me. My body burned first, a sickly green, then my lungs, and I felt like I could breathe fire and death, but not even that could break my bonds. Then my brain burned away and shriveled, leaving me unable to comprehend what was happening. Finally my heart caught fire and turned to ash, because why would a monster need love? Only when I was nothing but a tool, someone else's flame, someone else's torch, could I break free of my bonds. I stood up and the stretcher sank beneath me. The room was once white, but as my body looked around it, led by invisible strengths, it turned blacker and blacker. So I walked out of the center into the world. A great city stretched before me, vast and untouched. Buildings lay before me, and ponies. As I walked on unbidden hoofs, the world behind me started to burn. I walked past lie and mischief, and they burned away to bones. I saw the town of Timber burned as I walked by it, my hoofs trailing fire. Grimer tried to run away, but he couldn't escape. How could he? Mustang was next, but he tripped and fell, and then there was nothing. I pushed post-haste into the fire myself, my wire-guided hoofs listening to no command I gave them. I was death, I was fire, and who could escape? Pinprick and the Batmare ran for a while, but I was too fast, too steady, and soon they too were naught but ash. Then Foundation came. I tried to fight against the wires that guided me, but those pulling the strings were too strong. Foundation, wildfire, my life gone to the flames. If only I still had a brain to save them and lungs to breathe life back into them.
Cut the ropes!
Wildfire stood before me, her body made of grey smoke and red fire. She pushed against me, my green flames and body of black ash stopping in their tracks.
Cut the strings! You're not a puppet! I've always been a puppet,
I explained to the dead, my voice my own where my body was not.
Too stupid to fight back, too stubborn to see. I'm a follower, like Platinum Haze. Cut the strings and run!
Wildfire was saying desperately, her flames growing brighter and brighter.
You are you. Don't let them manipulate you. I am fire and ash.
My head lowered.
I am death and destruction. The rubble on my flanks show it. That's what I bring. I see it now. I didn't start the fire, but I spread it with every move I make. I can't fight what they made me. I'll die at their command, at their word. They made it so. And when I do, the world will burn, and that's my destiny. You're smarter than you realize and stronger than most can comprehend.
The smoke took solid form, but only for a second.
You're tough, too tough. Do you know the phrase between a rock and a hard place?
I blinked at her in confusion.
You are the rock. Shove them into a hard place and you are sure to win. To get out. What do you know?
My voice rose and behind me the flames rose. Emerald and jade, they threatened to swallow me whole. Tears stung at my eyes. Wildfire. She couldn't understand.
You're dead! Yes,
she said softly, her smoke and fire dissipating until there was nothing left.
But you don't have to be.
I woke up soaked in sweat. My eyes were blurry as I looked around the room. It was dark. It must have been night. The only light was from a candle in the corner, which was odd. Why was a candle lit in the room I was sleeping in?
Oh, you have awoken,
Platinum Haze said, suddenly appearing into view.
Why were you invisible?
It was a very important question to ask, because it didn't seem to make much sense to me.
Oh, you were mumbling in your sleep. We were worried that if we were right there when you awoke, it would startle you.
She smiled softly from the side of my bed.
Do you need anything? We can acquire water or food for you. No, nothing.
Though my head was a little dizzy and my body was in a lovely amount of pain.
For now, I just need to think. We are sorry. Were you having a nightmare? Is there anything we can do to offer assistance?
It was a sweet offer, but I wasn't really sure there was anything she could do.
Yes, a nightmare.
It was different from my usual nightmares, though. Wildfire didn't even die at the end. I guess because she was already dead.
Can I ask you a question? A personal one? It's important. Feel free to ask us anything you desire, and we shall answer it to the best of our ability. How did you...
I struggled to find the words. Maybe it was because of all that blood loss.
How did you deal with what happened to you, I mean? You used to be a pony before, right? And now you were taken and changed.
It wasn't the same what happened to me, not by a long shot, but out of all the ponies I knew, she was the only one I could imagine understanding. She looked down at the floor for a second. We are not the best alicorn to ask such a question. We have heard many of our sisters' complaints about Mother's actions, and while we understand them, we cannot admit to agreeing on their feelings. She gulped a little bit. We liked what had happened to us. Our life was not pleasant before Mother took us in. She gave us a purpose, meaning, and family. Oh, I said softly, feeling slightly disappointed. Perhaps you could speak to Diamond Sky, Platinum Haze said. She would understand, we think. She has always been bitter of Mother's designs and never wanted this form, and still wishes she did not have it. We have spoken to her about it on many occasions. She has told us she felt violated by the actions taken against her will, that she often had trouble looking herself in the mirror because the figure that looked back was not her. When I asked her why she felt this way, she said it was because her life should be hers alone, and ponies using it to their own ends without a care for her. It upset her. We can understand these feelings. I nodded along as Platinum Haze spoke. I'm not sure what to think. I pressed a hoof to my chest, trying to see if I could feel the fire burning inside me. I hate it. What they did to me. I don't even remember it, but I hate it. Why? It was a simple but powerful question.
Because they had no right.
I grit my teeth together.
It was my life, my body. They stuck me full of needles. For what? So I can die on their command? So I'll kill everyone around me? Without even having a say? Did you see the way they talked about me? On the videos? I was an experiment. A tool.
I slammed my hoof down on the bed, needing to get some of my anger out. We are sorry, Platinum Haze said sincerely. We are unsure what words of condolence we can offer.
It's fine.
I lowered my head back onto the pillow. I'm not sure what I was expecting from her, but sympathy was what I was going to get. Of course I knew she wouldn't feel what I felt, but it was good to have some small part of understanding. Not that it made me feel any better or makes a fire in my chest burn any cooler.
Where's Serenity?
Last time I was sick on a boat, she spent most of her time by my bedside. We sent her off to bed a while ago. We recognized she cannot stay awake with as few ill effects as us. She protested at first, but we assured her we would make sure no harm would come to you this night. We are not even sure what she imagined would happen.
Well, last time I was on this boat I was, attacked by assassins.
Good times. You were... what? She seemed a bit shocked, though I wasn't sure why. For what reason? That was a very good question, and like most very good questions, I didn't have an answer for it. I tried to think, but came up with nothing. I knew they were from Molly, but I wasn't sure why she wanted me dead so badly. I know she blamed me for ruining her attack on the Mustangs.
Molly wanted me dead,
I eventually said.
Not sure why. She wanted me dead when you met her too.
She ruined my date. I really was going to need to have a chat with her about that. Assuming I didn't explode in the near future. Before I could say anything more, there was a sharp knock on my door. Hired? It was Red Sky's voice. Are you awake?
Yeah,
I said through the door, wondering why he was bothering me. Well, if you're well enough, you need to get up and come to the deck. Some NCA folks want to see you, and they don't seem to be the type what ask nicely.
Okay.
I started to roll out of bed, which was painful, but thankfully I had Platinum Haze there to help me. Can you walk? I nodded to her question. Sure, it was going to hurt because everything hurt, but that never stopped me before. We are curious as to why the NCA have to come here, and for what purpose. We were unaware they even knew of your existence.
I worked for them a couple times,
I said as I started out the door. We are constantly amazed at the number of important ponies you have met that also want to kill you.
I never said they wanted to kill me.
You did not have to. That was a bit of a pessimistic way of looking at things. I wasn't even sure that was what the NCA wanted. Of course, the last time I had interacted with them, I had gone out of my way to save the ruler of their enemy from being captured. But what were the chances they still remembered that? I walked outside and realized it was just becoming morning. The sun peeked out over the horizon and bathed the sky and water in an orangey red. It was also so incredibly bright it took a second for my eye to adjust. My cybernetic eye had no such problem. For me to see the two uniformed NCA soldiers standing on the deck, wearing disapproving frowns. Behind them, attached to our ship by a plank, was another, much larger boat with sizable cannons on the sides. The pair looked at me and one spoke.
Are you hired gun?
Both ponies were red mares. Maybe they were related, though the one speaking to me was taller and had a green mane, where the others was blue.
Yes?
Good. The mare pointed her battle saddle rifles at me.
You are under arrest for treason against the New Caledonian Alliance. Please come quickly and quietly. Anything you say will be recorded and held against you. Once formal charges have been laid, you have the right to speak in your defense at your trial. Is this clear? Wait, what?
I took a step back. Even without subtlety, I had enough weapons on me to make short work of two ponies. But that ship would prove more troublesome. So the only option was to talk my way out of whatever this was.
I'm not even an NCA citizen.
The short pony spoke.
Did you or did you not receive a contract from Major Lucky of the NCA Armed Forces?
I nodded slowly to that, as I had thought that particular contract was a secret.
According to NCA Unified Law and NCA Armed Forces regulations, all contracted employees of the NCA are to be treated as NCA civilians in order to prosecute any misdeeds they may have done. If the contract is for any reason terminated, they will continue to be treated as NCA civilians for a period of 1 year to be sure they do not misuse any intelligence they may have received from the NCA Armed Forces.
Shit.
I looked over at Platinum Haze, but she was nowhere to be seen. It occurred to me at that moment that the last time she had met anyone from the NCA she was shot at. I couldn't really blame her discretion, but I really could have used her help.
Well, I refuse to go with you.
Red Skies gave me a bit of a glare.
What am I even being charged for?
The shorter mare answered again.
Conspiracy to commit murder against NCA personnel, conspiracy to commit terrorism, and obstruction of justice, specifically in regards to the events that unfolded at the Walcourt train station.
What did I supposedly do?
I got the feeling these ponies weren't really important enough to know.
Do you think we care?
The taller mare asked, which was also a good question.
These orders came directly from Major General Hailstorm. Maybe you're innocent, maybe you're guilty, maybe you're actually Celestia in fucking disguise. But when you get a signed letter from Major General, you follow those orders.
Well,
The tall mare cut me off and walked close. As she did so, my cybernetic eyes started to recognize her as a threat and put a border around her that marked her as the highest level of dangerous.
On that ship behind me are 30 heavily armed NCA soldiers who are mightily pissed they're not on the front lines. They've been itching for a fight ever since the bipeds tried to blow up our base, and they've been stuck looking for you. I was also told by a little birdie that you were injured recently and have no healing potions. And I also know you have a mare friend and a daughter you don't want to get hurt. And while we at the NCA would never condone hurting innocents, a firefight in such a small space would cause accidents. So let me make this choice abundantly clear for you. You can stay on this ship, but a contingent of 10 guards will be present with 2 following you at all times. Meanwhile, we will escort you and your ship to our farm north of here, where certain ponies eagerly await an audience with you. If you try to fight or the ship tries to escape, we have orders to kill you and anyone who tries to stop us. So I kindly suggest you agree to these terms. Am I making myself clear?
With great reluctance, I nodded my consent. It would be easier to escape NCA custody when not on a ship, so I would have to wait and plan my escape until after I met whoever was so interested in meeting me. But first I was going to have to talk with Walkirk, because I had a feeling I knew who the little birdie was. Of course, it occurred to me a few minutes later that there was no way I was going to be able to talk to Walkirk because the mere fact he existed was a secret. And he wasn't going to talk to me with new NCA guards tailing behind me. I wanted to talk to Platinum Haze, at least, but I doubted she would show herself with such a high chance of getting shot.
I'm going to take a shit,
I said to the 2 NCA guards following close behind me. I wondered idly if they realized how little of a threat they posed to me. Either way, I walked over to the boat's bathroom and started inside the door. And just as I expected, the guards started to come in with me.
What the fuck are you doing?
The guard looked confused. But ever since I laid eyes on him, he seemed perpetually confused. We have orders to keep an eye on you at all times.
I'm not letting you. Not in the bathroom, anyway.
I glared at the guard in mock outrage. But my orders...
There's no window, just a toilet. What do you think is going to happen?
I kept my gaze glued to the stallions in an attempt to intimidate him. It usually worked. But I...
Listen.
I pushed him out of the doorway.
If I don't get out in 5 minutes, knock or break down the door.
Before he even had a chance to reply, I walked through the door and closed it on his stupid face, leaving him standing there with his partner looking befuddled. I looked around the small room for a brief second before whispering,
Haze?
Like magic, there was a slight shimmer, and suddenly there she was standing. To my surprise, she wasn't alone. Serenity was perched on Haze's head, her tiny horn glowing pink.
Hi, Mama.
We are sorry about our actions earlier.
Hayes said slowly. We have brought Serenity with us so we can talk in peace. We have heard she has unique spells that has proven useful.
I'm basically a ninja.
Serenity explained, tapping her horn.
Probably the best ninja ever.
Of that we are sure. Platinum Haze tried to look at Serenity to smile at her, but given the filly was on her head, it proved difficult. Oh, She turned her attention back to me. We mean to apologize for our actions. We should not leave you bereft of friends at your time of need, but our previous experience has shown the NCA are hostile to our kind.
I understand,
I said with a sigh.
It's no big deal. If they were actually arresting me, they wouldn't let me stay on this boat.
Are you certain this is the case?
Well, yesterday I learned I'm actually a walking bomb, so no, I'm not certain about anything.
Hayes visibly recoiled. I guess my self-deprecating humor wasn't funny. We are still worried. The NCA's intentions are suspect from what we understand, and it would be in the best interest of all if we had an escape route planned if they mean to go through with such an act.
We go invisible, run away?
I offered as a plan. We suppose, though that is a bit simplistic.
So am I.
Besides, we didn't have a clue what to expect, so trying to plan anything bigger with such little information was foolhardy.
I could shoot him with all my ninja skills,
Serenity offered as a potential solution. I was slightly taken aback by Serenity's enthusiasm.
Do you really want to?
I asked her.
Not really,
she admitted.
Just wanted to sound cool.
There was a loud rapping on the door. Are you done in there? Stupid annoying guards.
Right, okay.
I looked back over at Hayes and Serenity.
Just, when I go, follow me silently. Be prepared for anything. It's not for a few days yet. So be careful on the boat with the guards around.
And with that I turned to walk out the door as the two of them vanished behind me. I don't remember the sun having an eye before. Maybe I couldn't see it before because it was too bright, but there it was, staring down at me. Funny thing about the clouds being gone, it means the sun can watch you all the more. It wasn't just the sun though, it was the walls too, when I went inside. They had eyes, following me as I walked across the room. When it was overcast, the clouds had eyes, and when it rained, the puddles looked up at me. I couldn't escape the eyes, no matter how hard I tried.
We are watching you,
the eyes whispered. I would ask why, but I wasn't allowed to voice. They heard my wordless question anyway.
We are the Watchers,
the eye said, its pupil burning a bright and vibrant green. Wake up. Huh? Wake up! Something jabbed me in the stomach and suddenly my eyes shot open. The guards who had been following me for the past few days as the ship sailed upriver were there. We're here. Your presence is demanded.
Yay!
I mumbled sleepily and picked myself up out of bed. The past few days had been obnoxious, as it was hard to rest and recuperate with morons following me around. On the bright side, they had healing potions on them which Serenity was nice enough to steal from them and sneak to me when they weren't looking. That combined with Platinum Haze walking around invisible led them and the other NCA ponies to suspect the ship was haunted. They looked relieved to finally leave. I stood up and stretched my legs. I figured I wouldn't be allowed to bring my weapons, but it wasn't like they were going to take my legs, so I was more than confident. They let me put on my armor though, which was nice and clean because I was able to wash all the blood off it during the trip.
Who am I meeting?
I asked as they escorted me out of the room. You'll find out, was the only answer I got.
I hope it's Major Lucky. We get along so well.
One of the guards shot me a surprised look, which pretty much confirmed my guess. Either that or he was surprised I had met Segul before. The two looked relieved as we finally left the boat onto the waiting dock. I had never seen the great NCA farm before, and the only thing I knew about it was that it was partially owned by Molly, and it provided most of the food and dyes. It was simply massive, stretching for miles in every direction even as the river bifurcated the farm in half. There was more green there than I had ever seen in my life, not to mention an entire orchard filled with full-grown trees.
Wah!
I said quietly.
How is that even possible?
You can thank the zebras of Kharkov, the guard said with a sly smile. Or could. They provided talismans that could purify soil of radiation to allow trees to grow. The radiation seeps back eventually. We used to trade them for fresh water, but since they vanished, we have enough talismans for now, and the NCA is looking at a way to make more. I was surprised he was telling me all this.
Who works the fields?
I saw a lot of ponies in the fields, but it wasn't just ponies. There were at least 3 minotaurs out there, and a lot of armed guards. The guards kept walking towards a large building on the wall of the farm. Workers from Thiese, mostly. They usually work in shifts, a week here, a week at Thiese. Though the NCA has been known to buy prisoners and put them to work, better than letting them rot. Oh, that's why he was telling me. He expected me to be put to work in the field. I would probably be good at it, but it seemed rather boring.
I see.
You will. The guard smirked again, reminding me that I hadn't kicked him in the face yet. Eventually, we reached the building, which to my surprise was actually a pre-war building. They must have built the farm around it because the other buildings I saw, I think they were residences, looked to be made of the usual scrap. The inside was slightly rotten and dank, with candles lighting up the room. I was quickly ushered into what I think used to be a dining room, but was turned into something of a war room. Maps and diagrams of the area were spread out across the tables, and there were a few computers. The doors closed behind me, leaving me with the 2 ponies in the room. Both of them I recognized right away, even if they didn't even look up from the maps they were looking at. I walked forward and cleared my throat, but the 2 just whispered to each other.
I
eventually said.
You had me arrested?
In a minute, hired.
Major Lucky growled. Eventually he and Major General Hailstorm looked up at me.
You look like shit.
Apparently a healing potion and a few days of rest weren't enough to make me look good after a dragon fight. The stitches that were still in my neck probably didn't help.
Better than you.
The last time I had seen Lucky, he had a spear in his chest, and I guess the radiation from the mega spell was enough to keep him alive. But it didn't fix the gaping hole where the spear once was.
Glad to see you and your prisoner get along so swimmingly.
The Major General looked vaguely amused. I think she was just happy to get away from strategy for the moment. It looked like it was taking a toll on her. At the very least on her pink mane, which was so frazzled I had to wonder if something was nesting in it.
So I actually am a prisoner?
I walked over to a nearby cushion to take a seat.
I'm curious, where do you plan to hold me?
We're not stupid.
Lucky's voice was quieter than it had been before, almost painfully so.
We cannot afford to keep you against your will. You are far too stubborn. We just knew this was the only way to get you to come to us, especially after foolhardily quit Thiese eyes.
How do you know about that? We have ponies paid to keep tabs on major gangs, and your leaving caused waves, but this is not why we are here.
The Major General waved a dismissive hoof.
We have a few questions for you. What was your relation with the pony named Pinprick? What?
That was the last question I expected.
She was a friend, I guess. Before everyone called her a hero, that's when I met her. Why do you care?
The 2 looked at each other in confusion before looking back to me.
You haven't heard about the riots, have you?
Lucky asked, leaving me dumbfounded. Which I guess answered his question.
Her funeral sparked riots across Thiese. Against the gangs, against us, against anything resembling a power structure. They've been going on for days. We had no means to fight rioters without killing them, so we had to pull back. Other gangs were not so kind. Bodies are burning in the streets. The way we hear it, some of the gangs have already fallen into ruin, and the rest are next.
What? No!
It was already happening. The Watcher's plan. Thiese was burning and soon they'd swoop in to clean up the mess they made, but not before anyone who could oppose them was dead.
You have to stop it! We had hoped to understand why they happened,
the Major General said. Granny Dynamite sent us information saying your connection to this pinprick and to a pony named Dragon Slayer could give us the information we need.
They couldn't come at a worse time.
Lucky looked to be seething.
First the zebras are attacked, then the war with the minotaurs, now this. The NCA doesn't have enough resources to fulfill all of these obligations. And if the council has its way, we'll be pulled out of DICE completely to focus on the minotaur threat.
Of course the NCA council would pull out. It all was starting to make sense. The Watchers wanted to capitalize on the chaos, and to do so they needed to make sure stronger parties couldn't first. And how better than starting a war? The pieces were falling into place, and all I could do was watch. Then something struck me.
During the build-up to the war,
I said slowly, trying to organize my thoughts.
I remember seeing NCA soldiers at the Black Salamander getting cybernetics.
You better be going somewhere with this.
Lucky growled, deeper than usual. I didn't even bother responding to him. I had to complete my thoughts.
Were there any soldiers who got cybernetics elsewhere?
The BS wasn't the only place to get cybernetics. There was a shadowy company called Cerberus that competed with them. I remembered that the current leader of the Mustangs, Mayhem, got his cybernetics from them, as he didn't want to support a rival. Lucky glared at me and looked like he was going to tell me to fuck off before Hailstorm cut him off. If you weren't able to get appointments and made other arrangements, only 4 to my recollection though, of the 36 NCA Rangers who got augmented. She walked back to her computer and pressed a few buttons. We've been keeping close watch on all of the new augmented troops. What do you ask?
Did any of them mention a burning sensation around the cybernetics?
Just saying that made the fire in my stomach burn and twist. Just imagining what was inside me was painful. The two looked dumbfounded at my eerily specific question. Hailstorm scrunched up her face and looked down at her computer, apparently looking up that information.
We were worried about rejection,
Hailstorm explained.
So we asked about every medical problem was reported and recorded. According to our files, 2 of them reported similar burning problems, but the source couldn't be found.
Shit. I could feel a thin trickle of sweat beat down my neck as my eyes went wide.
Recall them, or whatever. Don't put them on the front lines. You need to get them into surgery. Get them away.
I took a deep breath, trying to calm my mind, as the pair looked even more confused at me.
They have a chip in their head. It's a detonator. You need to find it and disable it, or else...
Or else what?
Lucky growled, walking towards me.
You're not making any sense. And we don't have time for your
They have megaspells inside of them!
That stopped Lucky dead in his tracks.
What?
Lucky said slowly.
You saw it! You 2 were both there! You must have seen it!
I took a deep breath.
On the screen, the laughing stallion, he started to glow, then the Batmare teleported him away. He had a megaspell inside of him. The pony you mentioned before, Dragon Slayer, he set him off!
I was indisposed,
Lucky said, a hoof moving to touch the hole in his chest.
I saw,
Hailstorm said.
I didn't know what that was. I never thought...
She sobered up.
How could you know this?
I put my cybernetic hoof to my chest.
It happened to me.
There was shock and disbelief on their faces.
I know you find it hard to believe me. It is the truth, though. The trigger they put in me was disabled by accident when I lost my eye. I was lucky. Your ponies may not be.
Who would do this?
Lucky's voice was filled with disbelief, but the fact that he was asking me questions, not just dismissing, meant I must have been getting through to him.
You wouldn't believe me.
Hired!
His voice raised enough to make me take half a step back.
Tell us!
The Watchers!
More disbelief.
Say, I'm pretty sure it is them, unless Dragon Slayer was lying. But according to him, they want DICE, the technology in it.
We can't believe you,
Hailstorm said after a long awkward silence.
Not without proof.
They had to believe. They had the power to stop it.
But for safety's sake, we can take 2 soldiers out of the fight for a week or so for some evaluations.
She started typing something on the computer, but stopped.
Oh, that's not good.
The last thing we needed was more bad news.
What?
Master Corporal Death Whisper has been reported missing in action. Hailstorm read.
It seemed he was reported missing in action during a battle for Canyon Ridge Bridge to the west.
She reached over and grabbed a drink from the table in front of her and took a sip. Which was weird because I didn't remember it being there.
He's presumed captured by Minotaur forces with no hope of recovery. I need to get him,
I said sternly.
No hope of recovery,
Major Lucky repeated.
No hope. I don't know what you were doing with the Minotaurs, but ponies are shot on sight.
Then,
I said with a small smirk.
I won't be seen.
Lucky gave a raspy, wheezing laugh that I didn't appreciate. I waited patiently for him to finish.
Hired, you aren't exactly subtle.
Funny, I remember another pony said that to me once.
I have subtlety on my side and...
I waved my hoof to the side. For as much as I hated the megaspell inside of me, the ability to sense magic was very welcome and let me get away with big gambles.
I have Platinum Haze.
Before they had a chance to ask who or what Platinum Haze was, the shimmer around her fell, leaving the tall Alicorn standing there with all eyes on her.
Hiya!
Serenity said, lying on the Alicorn's head.
Sorry, we didn't mean to interrupt or nothing.
Before I could stop him, Lucky reached for his gun, only stopping when Hailstorm put a hoof on his shoulder.
An Alicorn? I heard rumors that they have spread. Are you as dangerous as they say?
We are unsure how to answer that question accurately. We do not know the pony or ponies referred to as they, and thusly we have no knowledge of their expressed level of danger. However, you should have little to worry about in regards to us being potentially dangerous. We have vowed never to harm a sentient being, and thus far we have never broken our oath. Our name is Platinum Haze. It is a pleasure to meet the both of you. Platinum Haze reached out a hoof. Hailstorm shook it.
Damn, I was hoping you could be on our side. Don't suppose you know any other Alicorns who could be able?
Platinum Haze shook her head. We have a sister nearby who did not take such an oath, but she is doing an important task. No other sisters who we are associated with have traveled this far south, however. We know some lost sisters have. We cannot speak for them or their desires, but we would wish you did not harm them.
Sisters?
Lucky said curiously.
Like Luna and Celestia?
I had forgotten Lucky was old enough to remember when they were in pony form.
No. It is a long story and we wish not say it. But all Alicorns are sisters, and shall remain so until such a day when new Alicorns can be born. The new Alicorns would be our nieces, we suppose.
Hailstorm looked a mite confused, but accepted it.
And how exactly will you help Hired on this extremely dangerous mission that the NCA officially doesn't condone or recognize?
Huh? She tilted her head and looked over at me.
We imagined she refers to our obvious abilities in invisibility. As a blue Alicorn, we have been bestowed the power of invisibility, not unlike your stealth bugs. We are well practiced and are hard to notice, as you can attest to. Serenity here is also helpful in those endeavors. She is well versed in sound magic. Together we're basically ninjas,
Serenity explained.
Well, me more and her, cause I trip less.
Ninjas.
Lucky looked dumbfounded.
3 ninjas if you count Scooterborg. Serenity!
If we started talking about Scooterborg, all hope of ending this conversation quickly would be lost.
Sorry!
Serenity said in such a way it was clear she wasn't sorry.
Anyway,
I tried to steer the conversation back on track.
We need to find him. Get him back. In the meantime, the one who's still safe, look for the chip in his head. You'll see.
And if we do?
Lucky started to pace across the room.
Then what? The Watchers are evil?
Serenity scrunched up her face.
Or at least antagonistic towards DICE. What do you imagine the NCA would do about it? We are caught up in a war and don't have forces to spare.
Stop your war.
Focus on the ponies who caused it.
Lucky just laughed at me. Either that or he was gargling rocks. It was hard to tell with ghouls.
What Major Lucky means to say...
Hailstorm's brow was furrowed as she stared at Lucky. I was amazed she hadn't shoved her hoof in his mouth to shut him up.
Is that the NCA Council would never agree to stop the war. It's been coming for too long. However, the Watchers aren't a large organization, and if there is proof...
Right.
I got the feeling they didn't believe me.
Now, what can you tell us about Pinprick?
Hailstorm quickly changed the subject.
It was her funeral that caused the bloody riots, but nobody seems to know why.
She was a foul-mouthed bitch.
There was really no way around that.
But she helped ponies. The radio called her a hero. Ponies believed that. When a hero dies, they become a martyr. Martyrs are easy to exploit. Who she was doesn't matter. She's a symbol now of everything wrong with Thiese.
That's not helpful.
Lucky looked displeased at the whole conversation.
Sorry.
I tried to sound as sincere as I could.
I gave you everything I know.
Not everything, but it was everything they asked at least.
Can I go?
Would you take no for an answer?
Lucky asked. I didn't bother to respond. I just raised a curious eyebrow in his direction to see if he was serious.
Fine.
The NCA officially pardons you of all charges laid against you,
Hailstorm said, a small smirk on her face.
But don't go just yet. I assume you're going straight to find Dead Whisper?
I gave a slight nod.
You'll run into NCA patrols, so you'll need authorization. I'll write something up for you. Say you are there to perform some routine maintenance on our artillery. Once you go on your mission, though, you won't have the paper shield anymore. Try not to get caught or die. We will endeavor to make sure she does not get caught,
Platinum Haze said as I nodded my agreement. Serenity just said,
Ninjas!
And left it at that. We got our paper shield, got our stuff from the boat, and went on our merry way. Our two NCA guards seemed confused why we were let go, and I found it fun not to tell them. We said our goodbyes to Red Skies and his wife before heading off across the wasteland, the map on my pip-bug providing a useful guide.
Why the hell did you tell the NCA I could help them?
I waited until we were far out of the NCA hearing before yelling at Walkirk, who had spent the past few days acting like a robot, much to my annoyance. Or maybe he had actually just left the platform because he didn't answer me.
Hey, Walkirk!
I smacked the robot in the face, only for it to beep at me.
He does not appear to be responding. Perhaps a different tactic is required,
Platinum Haze offered as a solution. Well, not really a solution.
Though we know very little about such devices apart from their apparent weakness to bolts of lightning.
Like most things do.
I do.
Serenity hopped a few times to make sure we all heard her.
I mean, not really, but more cybernetics. How hard could it be?
Platinum Haze looked in the distance towards the waning sun.
It is late. We could camp here as Serenity tries to re-establish a connection. We are sore and wish to rest as well.
She said the last part quickly, which made me think she didn't want it to affect my judgment on the matter too much.
We can camp here.
I looked around. There wasn't much cover, just brown rocks and craggy hills, but there was a blackened husk of a tree nearby we could use for firewood, so it was as good a place as any.
Sweet!
Serenity ran towards the robot, a screwdriver already in her mouth. Before going over to the trees for firewood, I moved closer to Platinum Haze, putting a hoof on her back.
Lie down and rest. What's hurting? Did you take any healing potions on the boat?
Platinum Haze did as I asked, lying down softly. It also had the odd side effect of allowing me to look down at Haze.
Our wing, the one that was bitten by that wretched ghoul. We worry we have done some serious damage. After we flew after Flare to protect him from avarice, our wing has been in pain. Drinking a healing potion quelled the pain, but it returns still whenever we move our wing. We are afraid flying is out of the question at this moment.
Did Serenity have a look at it?
She gave me a quizzical look.
She learned some things from the Watchers, saved my life at least once with her skills. Usually it's related to cybernetics, but, I mean, she's no doctor. But if something is serious, she might be able to at least tell you what.
Ah, we see.
We shall inquire about it when she is not so busy with her little project. Her head tilted towards where Serenity was desperately fiddling with the robot. I gave her a soft nod before pressing my lips to her cheek.
All right, just rest for now. Don't overexert yourself.
We shall endeavor not to, she said, a slight blush upon her cheeks. Though we shall refrain from pointing out the irony of you, of all ponies, telling us not to overexert. I gave her a sly smirk.
Most ponies aren't me, so they shouldn't copy me,
I said before turning towards the blackened tree. You know, I had always wondered if trees grew this black or just were really old. I guess it was one of those mysteries I would never solve, and I guess either way, if they burned, they burned. It didn't take much to break through the tree. Just a few quick bucks and they had nearly as much timber as, well, timber? Which was poorly worded statement given what happened to timber. It took me about 25 minutes to have a nice stack of firewood. I was just about to bring it back when I heard a scream.
Ah! Mommy!
That was never something I wanted to hear. I booked it towards the campsite to see Serenity cowering as a robot loomed over her. Platinum Haze was nearby, but she seemed to have fallen asleep and was only just then groggily waking up.
Unauthorized modification detected. Commencing hostile disabling protocol.
The robot said, and still no Walcock to be found. Not even when the robot's missile launcher started to unfold. Bang! Subtlety shot around through what was the approximation of the robot's head in a spray of wires and sparks. With nary a beep, the robot slumped over, its lights turned off.
Hostile disabled.
I walked over to the robot and put a few more rounds in it just in case before turning to my companions.
I never liked his company anyway.
I couldn't sleep. I had trouble sleeping since my nightmare a few nights ago, and what sleep I did have tended to be fitful and interrupted. Something about these nightmares unnerved me more than usual ones. Perhaps I just needed to get used to them before I could sleep again, but in the meantime it was a hassle. All I could do was stare at the fire as it dwindled and waned in the moonlight. I hated fire. Fire consumed things. It ate up whatever it could touch and left nothing but ash. Even the smell of smoke unnerved me. It reminded me of things I would rather have forgotten. Of mistakes I could never undo. It was funny, though, how much fire seemed to follow me. Around me things burned, sometimes metaphorically, but often literally. And then when the flames died, only the smoke remained, the memory of the fire that once was. Of course, fire was also warm. It kept the dark at bay and keeps you safe from cold and loneliness. But at what cost? It was over so fast. The orange flames flicked around the broken ashen sticks that fueled it. The colors blended together and the flames twisted together like a musicless dance. Before long, the flames became a pony in my eyes. Then it became the pony. The wind breezed across a rocky plain, blowing my mane this way and that. But the image in the flames remained, her body still but flames swaying.
I don't blame you,
I heard her say. Or perhaps that was too the wind.
I never blamed you. You didn't have to,
I whispered under my breath. The blame I put on myself was enough for two. It was no wonder we fell apart after that. She tried to pull me back, but I refused to talk about it. Refused to acknowledge that any of it had happened. How could I blame her when she gave up trying? Maybe she never gave up. Maybe she was just waiting for me to be steady. Perhaps I finally was, but it was far too late.
Come back to me.
The dancing flames sputtered for a second, but before long the figure returned, glowing all the brighter.
I can't.
The fire inside my chest burned once again. I could feel it. Ever since I heard the truth, I could feel the fire inside flickering. Perhaps soon I would be with her, going out like an inferno before fading away and finally being with my lost family.
If anyone can survive, it's you.
The flame sputtered again. Slowly but surely, wildfire faded again. The light died, and the figure before my eyes was no more, leaving only a thin trail of smoke to remember her by.
Mama?
Serenity was standing on the other side of the fire, half obscured from smoke.
Are you awake? I thought I heard you talking.
Her voice was low and uncertain, as if she were afraid to wake me up. I suppose it was a good thing I was awake.
Yeah.
Serenity stepped around the dead fire to me.
Can I sleep over here with you tonight?
It wasn't that odd a request, but there was something about the way she asked it.
Of course.
I'm not sure if she actually expected me to say no.
What's the matter?
She didn't say anything at first, instead opting to lie down next to me and wait until I put a leg over her.
Nothing.
Well, that was a pretty feeble lie. I didn't call her out on it though, I just stayed quiet. If she wanted to tell me, she would. And eventually she did.
Dragon Slayer was a bad pony, right?
I had a feeling I knew where this line of questioning was going, so I answered as simply as I could.
Yes. Like, really, really, really bad? Yes.
I repeated.
But the dragon, Everest.
She corrected herself to make sure she used the dragon's name. That seemed, I don't know, important.
He said Dragon Slayer was his papa. He did. So I killed his papa.
Serenity concluded. Once again, I didn't bother to answer, letting her work through it herself.
Does that make me a bad pony? Do you feel like a bad pony?
It was the most relevant question I could ask.
No. Yes. Maybe?
She huffed and snuggled herself closer.
He deserved it, but Everest didn't think so. But he tried to kill us too. We tried to kill his father first. But he set traps for us and kidnapped me and...
I cut Serenity off.
I'm not defending them, but we were planning on killing him.
Serenity pouted at me for a minute, but it slowly faded away.
I don't like it. Killing ponies. I kept trying to remind myself that he was a bad pony, you know, and that he deserved it, but then his dragon son was crying. That don't make him any better, though. But it makes you feel worse.
I slowly lifted my leg up to brush at her mane.
Yes,
she admitted.
Good.
She looked up at me with a mask of confusion on her face.
Killing should never be easy. If you get used to it, if it starts to feel normal or right, then something is wrong. You should feel bad when you kill ponies, even bad ponies, because you should wish there was another way. Do you feel bad?
It was a simple question, but one I didn't really know the answer to.
I try.
I stopped petting her mane to place my hoof gently on her back.
But you don't have to kill anyone. You could be like Platinum Haze and vow to do no harm. But I've saved you before, by killing.
She made a good point, but it wasn't as relevant as she thought it was.
Sweetie, then you make a choice.
I closed my eyes and gave a deep sigh.
I can't tell you what to do. You have to choose for yourself. Whatever you do, it won't be easy though. It never is. That wasn't the answer I was hoping for. Sometimes, lots of times, there are no right answers. Just answers that seem right at the time.
I gave her a squeeze.
You're strong and smart though, and very capable. If you never want to touch a gun again, I understand.
Serenity nodded but didn't say anything. I wish I could have been more comforting to her, but I didn't want to lie. She was in too deep for comforting lies to help at all. Eventually she fell asleep, snuggling up to me. But I stayed up and looked down at her, praying she would make better choices than I had. Level up. Skill note. Speech 90. New perk. Mega spell anomaly. You now explode when your health is 20 or below. It is probably deadly.
We here at Pony&Wolf Productions thank these amazing patrons of ours for their monthly support. without which all of this would not be possible. We sincerely appreciate it, and every dollar helps, is needed, and will be used to keep us going to produce audiobooks for your continued enjoyment. It is, now more than ever, important that you support your favorite creators if possible, due to YouTube changing in a way that is not very friendly to content creators. Especially small content creators, like us. In recent months, the names you see on screen have enabled Midnight and Visual Pony to keep going and only having to sell off part of their belongings to not end up on the street. As an incentive for everyone, Visual Pony has broken a vow and has promised to read and record FalloutEquestria, Murky number 7, should the monthly support reach $1,500. To be clear, this is the absolute minimum amount needed to keep the apartment and all bills paid without starving, while a production of this size is ongoing. The estimated time for this production would be 3 to 4 years, but people already said that Project Horizons was impossible to do, right? And now look who did it, so with Pony&Wolf, you know we can finish the job. For further information on how to support us, please have a look at the description of this video, as there are also other ways, like our merch store. Sincerely and forever yours, your Pony&Wolf team.